So delighted to be joined here by Joe Blake, the BRGA secretary, just to talk about the controversy surrounding the under 17, under 18 grading system in minor in the last few weeks. First of all, Joe, how are things with you? How are you keeping?
All good. Thanks, Matthew. It's great to be here on the Southern Star Sports Star podcast.
Great to hear, Joe. So, first of all, before we kick things off, a lot of people would be unfamiliar with the word decoupling on the Irish Examiner article written by Owen Cormack recently. So, if you could explain to the viewers in simpler terms, what does decoupling actually mean?
Means basically separation. So at the moment, you have to be under 18 to play minor football. You can't be under 17. So what it means is that if the new proposals were brought in, the 18-year-olds would not be allowed, those under 18-year-olds would not be allowed to play adult football with their clubs. So it's a total separation. At the moment, you have decoupling at 17-year-old, at 17, under 17, a total separation. So you can't play adult football when you're under 17. So the proposal is to bring this up to under 18.
And you mentioned on the Examiner article as well that this will have a detrimental effect on the Beara division, never mind clubs in the division as well. So, yeah, this would be a really big development in BRGA.
Yeah, it would. So just to give people a bit of background in case they don't know the lie of the land down here in Beara. So we have 6 clubs. So we'd have, starting off in the east, we'd have Glengarriff, then my own club, Adrigal, Castletown Bear Island, Garnish and Urn. So some of the clubs, Castletown Bear would be the highest graded, they'd be Premier Intermediate, and then you would go down to Glengarriff, Bear Island, who would be a Junior C club. So where this will come into play is that numbers are tight down here in Beara. Before, we used to have 5 underage clubs. Now we have 3. So my own club and Glengarriff would be formed for Cahaogue. Garnish and Bear Island have kind of put their players in with Castletown Bear, and then you have Urn. So before, Garnish would have had their own team, Adrigal would have their own team, but we don't have that anymore. So already you can see the effects of depopulation and migration that's taking place in the Beara Peninsula. And this will have an effect down the road, without a doubt, at adult level. And if this was to come in, preventing under 18s playing at adult level, it would only speed up the process. And I think Jim Hanley, one of our Beara delegates, said at the Beara board meeting last Tuesday night, that it's a death by 1,000 cuts, and this is another cut, and this is a big one, and it will have a big effect on players. Like, I give an example, we were supposed to have 5 teams in our Junior B Championship, and only 4 of them fielded. 1 team couldn't field, and another team had only 14 players for championship starting off, and they were able to get another player to tag off midway through the first half. So they played the whole game with the bare 15 players. So that just tells you how tight numbers are currently. Going down the road, and I think you probably saw it in the Irish Examiner article about the numbers. I was astounded a couple of weeks ago when I was told the numbers that started in Beara. So you'd have 9 primary schools on the Beara Peninsula, and 2 of the schools would be in Glengarriff. So those students would tend to go to secondary school in Bantry. So there is 7 primary schools feeding into the secondary school in Castletown Bear, and only 24 children started between those 7 schools. One of the schools had 0 children starting. 2 of the schools had one child starting, and another school had 2 children starting. And then the other 3 schools had different numbers. But it just goes to show what's coming down the tracks. What we're dealing with currently, numbers are very tight, but it's going to get worse down the road. And there's no point in 5 or 10 years' time where a team has 13 players and there's a few 18-year-olds outside the wire looking on, but they can't play, then that's too late. Now is the time that we need to say stop, and just we can't afford to let this happen.
And with this minor system, it's this, people are saying that it could go up to under 18 level, and what would that mean? Would be, if correct me if I'm wrong, no, but that means under 18s can't play senior level. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would be correct. That the under 18s can't play adult level. Now, it's interesting because number of, maybe I think it was 2 years ago, possibly last year, the suggestion being put forward is decoupling. I think a lot of people, the majority of people, want to see the minor going back to 18. So the big question is whether to decouple or not to decouple. And I'm of the opinion that you don't decouple, that you would play minors, championship, league games on Wednesday nights, and then you play adults at the weekends. And like there is where the big problem is a lot of, say, teams in the city and with big numbers, they're speaking about that their under 18s won't get games, and that there's a big drop off rate. Well, I kind of put forward a suggestion that if you look back before, there used to be a competition for, it used to be the non-exam leagues. So basically these competitions were for players who weren't doing leaving certs, and it meant that clubs could still play games without their leaving certs, and they were not effectively called non-exam leagues. That you could have leagues for players who are not playing adult football. Because if you look at the rural clubs, once a player comes 18, he goes training and more like and possibly playing with his adult team. While in the bigger clubs in the city and the suburbs, that might necessarily be the case. So that player doesn't have games. So by setting up maybe leagues for players that are not getting games at adult level, it means they're getting regular, meaningful games. So it's like no other county in Ireland has such a variance in demographics, because we're trying to cater for the rural clubs in Beara, but we're also trying to cater for the urban clubs with large populations in the city. So another county in Ireland is probably doing that, and it's a delicate balancing act.
And by any chance, have you approached Croke Park over this? Have you complained to Croke Park about it?
Well, I haven't been on to Croke Park in the last couple of weeks, I suppose, if that's what you're asking. Because I mean, at the moment, this is being discussed at Cork level. And in fairness, we had a great discussion. We've had 2 meetings about this. And Kevin O'Donovan, I served on the county executive for 3 years with Kevin O'Donovan, the likes of Mark Sheehan, Pat Horgan. They understand, they get it. Because you take, for example, Kevin, he's from small club down in West Cork himself, so he knows about the numbers. And in fairness to Kevin and Pat and Mark, they know the challenges that we're facing. So I suppose what we're trying to do is find a solution in Cork first. But in terms of Croke Park, I don't know if they actually worry about us, if they actually care, because it makes no difference to them whether, like, if a club in Beara or West Cork, is unable to field or ceases to exist. I mean, makes little difference to the people up in Croke Park, while it makes a big difference to the J people in Cork. So look, we're seeing if we can come to a resolution in Cork, and there is going to be proposals for Congress at the end of February in 2023. So we'll see what those proposals are. And it was interesting. I actually got an email from a club in Tyrone. They emailed me on Tuesday night to say that the clubs in Tyrone were 95% against decoupling. That the clubs in Tyrone want to have their players playing both adult and minor football and hurling. So that was very interesting to hear from Tyrone.
And I suppose you mentioned the fear of extinction for some clubs in the Irish Examiner article. Like there's 6 clubs in Beara at the moment. Say, as you mentioned there, Bear Island in Junior C. There's 3 clubs currently in the county championships: Castledown Bear, Adragol, your own club, and Oran, who are in the Premier Junior Championship next year. But you mentioned that the Bear division could be in trouble here as well. They played in the Premier Senior Football Championship, like divisional section as well. So, like, is that a fear as well that numbers could be going down there as well?
Well, I'll give you an example. Like there was 24 children started in across the community or the primary schools feeding into Beara Community School, and I think you had another 8. So that was 32 started across the peninsula. And like if you had 6 years of that, you like I did my leaving cert in 1998, and there was 450 pupils in Beara Community School at the time. And if you had 6 years of 24 children starting, you would actually have less than 150 children in the secondary school. Like I started secondary school in 92, and there was 104 of us in the class. In 8 years' time, there's going to be 24 starting. So that's going to have a knock-on effect. And I spoke to I rang a couple of the teachers and principals around Beara just to get the numbers to see what was starting in their school. And like one of the principals came back and he said that look, the people outside of Beara know, they don't have an idea what we're facing down here, what the challenges are. And he said that in years to come, Beara will struggle to have a team. Never mind the clubs. Do you know? So I mean, like if you have 24 children, like I'll give you an example. This year, Beara won the under 19 championship. They beat Castlehaven in the final. We had about 24 tagged off, and people might say, "Oh, 24, that's a fine number." That's between 6 clubs, and that, believe it or not, was spread across 4 age grades because we had 2 under-16s playing. So if you have 6 clubs into 24, that's 4 per club, and over 4 age grades, that's 1 per year per club. So that's 1 person. No, that's on average. Some had more, some had less. But then if you start looking at, well, if there's only 1 coming through per year, it means that you're going to probably have to have every boy playing over the space of 22, 23 years coming out to just to field the team. And then there's always going to be drop-off rate. And then people are going to go traveling. I know my own club this year, 3 lads went off to Canada. So you start doing the sums and the numbers are not going to add up in years to come. No, a club mightn't face going out of existence next year or the year after, but it could be 10 years' time, it could be 15 years' time when clubs aren't able to field. And as I say, it would be an awful shame if a team had 12, 13 players and then they had a couple of young lads outside, 1 or 2 18-year-olds that couldn't play. So I think the decisions we take now will be felt maybe in years to come.
And I was looking at an independent article, I think by Dermot Crow or somebody that you sent to me during the week as well. And he mentioned that Ollie Rowe Sullivan, one of the best ever Beara GA players, started playing senior adult football at the age of 14. And that days looks like it's long gone as well. So does that kind of show, like, does that make a mockery of the whole thing in a way that a player could have played senior football at 14 at that time, and now, like you have to be about 19 to play it now?
Yeah, well, I think Ollie might be an exception to the rule because he was a tough 14-year-old. And Ollie's tagged off again. Ollie's still playing. I think Ollie was 50 this year and he was tagged off. And he didn't play in the championship match, but he could have played in the county championship matches, I'm not sure. But Ollie played championship last year. At the age of 49, he played for Garnish. And knowing Ollie, he probably played this year as well. So back then, yeah, it was, you could, Ollie said he played at 14, and I wouldn't doubt him one bit. But like, it changed a couple of years ago where 16-year-olds could play. So if you were under 17, you could play, but then that changed. And interestingly enough, Cork actually voted against that change because I remember speaking at the county convention, myself and Kevin O'Donovan had a great debate about Nemo Rangers, and Cork actually voted against it. But when it went to Congress, Congress actually voted in favour of basically saying that you couldn't play if you were under 17. So, and there's a couple of fears too as well that kind of came out, and there was always a fear before about the Cork minor holding up everything, that if Cork got a run in the minor hurling or minor football championship and got to an All-Ireland semi-final or final, the whole lot would be held up. The issue with the split season, that's all over, because the Cork minors are finished and the Cork 20s, but all the inter-county competitions are finished before the senior championship starts, the adult championship start in Cork. So that fear is put to aside. Another point that was raised at the county board meeting was, you know, the clubs will only have to take the hit for a year, and then there'll be a flow of players coming through. There isn't any flow of players coming through in Beara. There's a trickle, and you know, if a tap is trickling at some stage, it's going to stop, and every okay. And I've spoken to clubs here, and I'd be asking them, have you many coming through next year? Might be one, might be two, but every so often the club will say to me, we've nobody coming through. We've nobody coming through from under 17 to under 18. While other clubs might be up in the suburbs, might be up in the outskirts of Cork, in the city, they could have 10 players, 10, 12 people coming through every year on the age. And look, it's look, there's different challenges to be faced in Cork. The city clubs, suburb clubs, they have their own issues. Player drop-off rate, big numbers. Some of the clubs are struggling to get playing areas for their teams. But we have different issues down here.
And you mentioned already that the Bear Division won the under-19 championship against Castlehaven, but with 24 players and the issues that you explained brilliantly there, does that kind of, you know, up the achievement as well? But that was a brilliant achievement to beat a decent Castlehaven side of the day.
Yeah, we actually beat Nemo Rangers by a point in the semi-final. And funnily enough, we were drawn to play Douglas away. So what they did for the quarterfinals was first team out of the hat at home advantage. And Douglas were drawn at home at under 19 level. And they couldn't field the team to play us. I don't know, I think maybe the lads gone away on the leaving cert holiday or something like that. So we played Nemo Rangers and beat Nemo by a point. And then we beat Castlehaven by, I think, 3 points. And it was a great achievement. But it was great to see, and I remarked about it in the Irish Examiner article. I think there was 5 of that team had played county championship with either Adrigor or Castletown Bear. So they were playing adult football, and I felt that those players were more developed, more advanced, because they had been playing adult football. And if you look at the structure of the football in Cork, the setup, I know my own club, the amount of games they were playing, I think Castletown Bear are probably in the same boat. We would get 9 league games in our division. So you get 9 league games. We also are guaranteed 3 championship matches. And we also enter the Tom Creedon Cup, which is kind of for football clubs only. And we get 3 games there. So we get a minimum of 15 games at football. And then obviously if you get to a county quarterfinal, or if you get to Tom Creedon Cup semi-final or league semi-finals, you get extra games. Something tells me we could have we had a lot of extra games this year. But those players, those 18-year-olds, there's games for them if they wanted. Well, if they were playing maybe minor, just under 18, you might have a situation where they might be in a group of 4 for league, and they might get 3, get to semi-final, maybe 4 games. And then if they're playing knockout minor championship, they might get 1 or 2 games. Some of them might only get 6 or 7 games at under 18 level if they're only allowed to play under 18. But there's an option there if they're good enough that they're playing, and a lot of them would be, at adult level, when they come down and they're needed here in Beara, they could get up to anything to minimum of 15 games. And I thought I saw that stood out to me, that we had a lot of good players, but they were a lot more experienced than maybe the Castlehaven lads, because I think they might have only had one, maybe two lads who had played with the senior team this year in the Haven. So I thought that was an advantage of our 18 and 19-year-olds playing adult football with their clubs in the county championship.
And you mentioned 18 or 19-year-olds as well. And another point you actually referenced at the Irish Examiner is in Adrigole's intermediate A quarterfinal defeat, the goals for the Adrigole players actually came from 18-year-olds. Correct me if I'm wrong, no, but like that also shows that these players are well able to play senior level.
It was actually the same player. I think we got 4 goals, and 3 of them came from the same player, who was an 18-year-old. And he's a very good footballer, George Shea. But he's not the biggest footballer. He's not big and strong, and people were referencing like a Ben O'Connor in hurling for the Bars. Like Ben O'Connor is a big stature of a guy. Gerard O'Shea is not a big stature of a guy. He's a great footballer and a great lad. And like he got 3 goals. He got a goal, I think, against Kilshannig, got a goal against Barry Desmond, and got a goal against Bohobui. So I mean, that just goes to show that an 18-year-old who isn't the biggest guy in the pitch is able to use his skill, and look at the impact that he made for Adrigole this year. It was really important, and we would have struggled without him.
Yeah, definitely so. And there's a few other points of this, but we'll go on all day if we have to go over them and all that. But just a bit of a conclusion, like if under 18s were allowed to play senior level and it went to under 18, and that was that, would you be a fan of it going to under 18, this minor level competition? Let's just say the under 18s are allowed to play senior level, but if they're not allowed to play senior level, would you still stick with under 17 level?
Well, I think a lot of the clubs in Cork are in favour of going to under 18, because they feel that there's too big a gap between the under 17 and the under and then going into adult level. The other thing is, what do you do with the under 21 competition, or we call it under 20, under 21? What do you do with that? Because that's a competition that needs looking at in terms of its structure, because in a lot of places, the way it used to work in Cork in football, it was run by the divisions. So it used to be knockout, but the thing about knockout is that 50% of the teams only get 1 game, and it's great if you get into the latter end of the county championship. You might end up playing 4 or 5 games in the under 21 championship, and that's great. But for the team that loses in the first round, like, they only get 1 game. So the whole under 20, under 21 situation needs to be looked at too as well. And I know people say it's a very important grade, and I agree totally with that. But it's a great, if it's such an important grade, then why are 50% of the teams only getting 1 game at that level? And also the thing is when do you play it? Because before there was kind of a tradition that we'd say the division championships used to be played in March and April. But the problem is now with the split season, you have the Cork under 20s who are playing, we'd say, Munster Championship and hopefully an All-Ireland Championship. That tends to go in March, April, and it used to finish around the May bank holiday weekend before college exams would start. So I don't see the Cork under 20 manager maybe releasing the players in a split season when other counties might not be doing that. So look, there's a lot of things at play here. Again, I think these issues have to be raised, and luckily enough, the likes of Kevin O'Donovan, Mark Sheehan and Pat Horgan have taken these on board. They said they're hoping to agree to maybe meet with the small rural clubs and see if a solution can be found. No, there's different ideas being thrown around that maybe players might have to say, we'll play adult, but we won't play minor. But the problem with that is that you're asking kids then to make a choice. You know, some of them might want to play adult, some of them might want to play minor. So look, and then people were saying, oh, you could let them play for league and not for championship, or for championship and not for league, vice versa. But it gets pretty complicated, and I think we were kind of told that that wouldn't stand up under general rule. So look, there's a lot of things that that need to be discussed, but I think a lot of things need highlighting too as well. And we're lucky that over the last couple of weeks we've been given the forum, both in the media and also at the county board meetings, to raise these concerns. And I know the Cork County Board have taken them on board. They are listening to us. But I would hope that sometimes maybe the people in Crow Park would take note of what we're saying. So it all remains to be seen.
And hopefully they will take notice, because it's a huge issue, definitely. And as I said, Joe, we could be talking about this forever or day, but we'll have to leave it there due to time constraints. Thank you very much for coming onto the podcast, and hopefully the issue gets resolved sooner rather than later.
All right, thanks, Matthew. Thanks for having me.